Hi everyone, this is Miquel Garcia Fernandez. I'm the CTO at Rokubun, and this is the second session of the workshop that works with the AMIC GNSS data in order to get and extract some relevant information for ionospheric monitoring. So in the last session, we learned how what is the AMIC network, that we call it Acorn, and how to download data out of it and save it into a file that we can use it later on. So one of the questions that are relevant when we're using affordable receivers is to what extent we can use it for applications such as ionospheric monitoring, where the importance or the noise of the observables are supposed to be low enough so that we can get relevant information. So therefore, this notebook will basically address this question, right? So which is the measurement quality that we can expect from these affordable receivers? And in more detail, what we are going to learn from this second part of the workshop is this summarized in these 3 points. So basically how to download data that have been stored in CSV. So if you remember from the last session, we loaded the RINEX into a data frame and then stored it to the CSV. So then here we are going to do the inverse step, right? So from a CSV, load it into a data frame. Then we are going to plot and analyze raw observables. By raw observables, we mean GNSS observables like pseudo range, carrier phase, Doppler, and C over N0. And then we are going to learn how to compute the pseudo range and carrier phase noises based on combination from these ranges. Everything is going to be done through pandas, which is really a useful tool for that purpose. So let's start. First, as usual, we are going to install the local package that we developed for this workshop. As you recall, this is a source file that it's basically installed along with the relevant dependencies into this session. And then we are going to import several modules. Let's skip some explanations from now. The important thing is that we are going to retrieve the load CSV package and several methods that are the trend LI combination. LI stands for the ionospheric combination of phases. We are going to use it later on, as we will see. So first step is just inspecting the data, checking the raw observables, and then plot them. To do that, we are going to use the load CSV method that we imported before. If you type help load CSV, you will get the help function. Basically, it preprocesses the CSV and then delivers a pandas data frame as stated in the help function. So let's go, and then we just load the AMIC sample CSV file. And then if we make a head of the CSV, we'll see that there is a kind of CSV looking table, right? So have several rows. This is just the first 5. We have epoch, we have constellation, satellite, the tracking channel, some say, let's put it this way, nickname for the signal. So the first 3 specify the satellite, the last 2 specify the tracking channel. This is very useful later on to filter out signals. Then range, phase, Doppler, SNR, several flags, and cycle slip indicator. This can be extracted from the receiver itself, or then we can apply our own methods to detect cycle slips. So then, as a first activity, or let's see how we can get the list of satellites that are stored in the CSV. To do that, we just filter this data frame by the sat column. This effectively takes only the satellite column, and then we apply the unique function, which basically takes only those values unrepeated. So we can see that we have Beidou satellites, Galileo GPS, Russians, GLONASS, and that's mostly it. Also, more things that we can do is basically create a satellite object and then filter the data frame for a specific satellite that we are interested in. For instance, in this case, we just filter out for the GPS 22. This will include all the channels for that specific satellite, as you can see here in the table. Additionally, we can also check which are the observables that are available for each combination. In that case, we are going to select the columns of choice, which is the constellation and the channel. That's the two relevant parameters that we are interested. And then we are going to make unique combinations by grouping by columns, right? So we are going to group by unique values of constellation and channels, and then check the count number. If we do that, we will see that we have, for instance, for Beidou 2i channel, we have 60,000 samples. For Galileo 1C and 7Q, another 20,000, GPS 1C, 2L, 2S, 100,000, and so on and so forth. Sorry. At this point, it's interesting to note that for GPS, we have 1C and 2L and 2S. Because u-blox chipsets track the public codes on the L2 frequency. So we get the short or the medium, right? The medium code for 2C, and then it swaps to the long one in the L2 frequency as well, the public one. We have also some GLONASSes and S-buses here. Okay, and this is a bit abstract, so we usually are interested in seeing how an observable looks like, or a pseudo range for a specific satellite and tracking channel looks like. So we are going to plot one, and here we are going to select this signal, the 1C tracking channel for the Galileo E2. So here again, what we do is we filter the data frame by this specific signal. That's what we do here in this command. So if we do that, please notice that the signal for all the rows are the same. These are just the first 5, but obviously we could also check the size by, instead of head, we could also use, for instance, let's do it this way. We could put len df sample, and this would give us the number of samples for that specific signal. In this case, it's 9,000. Also, for later, we will need to compute the wavelength, because if we need to combine measurements from code and phase, we will have to transfer the L1, which is expressed in cycles, into meters. To do that, we have several convenience methods that were basically for each and every row in the sample data frame, we apply a function. And this function is defined here. So then here for each row, we take the channel, and then the channel we convert it to a class, an object of class tracking channel that allows us to get its wavelength depending on the constellation, right? That's what it does. If we actually print the wavelengths, we will have now a data series wavelength, right? And you can see that for each and every row, the 9,000 rows, we have the L1 wavelength. This we will need it later on, not as of now, but if we want to plot, like in this case, right, this is where we plot the ranges and the phases. So we compute the range just by filtering the sample by range, and the phase we filter it by phase, and then multiply by the wavelength, right? Since the two arrays are of same size, then it will work. And then these are like the plotting commands, right? If we plot the time series, we get something like that. So at this point, you might be puzzled by these jumps. Usually when we plot pseudo ranges from or raw pseudo ranges, we would expect some parabolic shape. Instead, here we have something that seems a parabola, but it offers some jumps. Yes, these jumps are due to the receiver clock jump. This is not a problem as long as all the pseudo ranges and all the phases have this same jump. in that case, what it will happen in positioning engines is that these jumps will be absorbed by the estimation of the clock, of the receiver clock. But in this case, we have these jumps, and then that's what we can see here. But in any case, it's present, as I said, in the range and the phase, so this is not a problem, right? So the clock will absorb that. Obviously, the problem with this is that we are trying to measure. Let's recapitulate here a little bit. So we want to measure the noise of the code and the phase, and this is typically on the orders of meters, whereas the ROP pseudo ranges, let's go back at the plot, we are talking about 20,000 kilometers. So actually it's impossible to distinguish any noise pattern that happened in the receiver. We have to find other means to do that. The way in which we actually do it is by removing the biggest contributions. Obviously, the biggest one is the geometry, but we have additional ones like receiver clock, satellite clock, tropospheric delay. These are way larger than the actual noise of the receiver. But then if we could find a way to remove those from the measurements, then we could probably see what is the noise of the range. As it turns out, there is a means to do that. So we can actually use the code minus carrier, or CMC for short, observable, because the carrier and the code contain the geometry, the receiver clock and satellite clock. If we subtract both, then we will be able to remove these nuisance parameters in that case. One of the things that we have to do, obviously, is because the carrier is ambiguous, we have to first edit the data, because we want to detect continuous phase arcs. We will have then to remove this constant bias for each and every of these phase breaks, and then we will be able to compute the code minus carrier. Now, for each of those arcs, we subtract the code and the carrier. And then we will have to make a detrending, because even though we remove the geometry, we still have some parameters that we are not interested in that case. In that case is the ionosphere and some other noise contributions like multipath. So let's first edit the data. So usually the receiver does a good job by editing the data in funding cycle slips. But there are others, like for instance time gaps, and you could even do more sophisticated one like narrow lane or wide lane using the Melbourne-Gubena combination, etc. In this tutorial, we'll keep it simple. Just mark the time gaps as cycle slips. Then in here, what we do is just add another field, which is the arc ID, that identifies each and every one of the arcs that are present for each type of signal. Here again, the signal field is very useful for us. And then what we do now, once we have the arc ID, we can compute the carrier minus code for each and every arc that are present in the data frame. So this is what this method does. It takes a little bit of time, but now notice that we have two additional fields. The wavelength, because obviously if we were subtracting the phase from the code, we need to convert the phase to meters, so that when we are subtracting the same units. And then we have the CMC, right? Obviously, if one of the fields is not a number, then the CMC is going to be invalid. Okay, so now we are in the position of checking how the CMC looks like, right? So we'll take one of the signals. In that case, if you recall, it was the 1C for the 1C tracking channel for the Galileo E2. So then let's plot this, and we get something like that. Notice that we don't get anymore the 20,000 kilometer ranges. Instead, we have something that is on the meter level. So here at that point, I want to point out three types of contributions. One is a very slow frequency contribution. That's the ionosphere. The ionosphere evolves very slow in time. That's this major trend here, that like the decreasing trend. Then we have like a mid-range, mid-frequency noise that it's mostly caused by multipath. And then we have a much higher frequency on top. That's the noise that we are interested in. That's the thermal noise, that's the receiver noise, and eventually that's the observable noise that will eventually determine the accuracy of the positioning engines. So in order to estimate which is this high noise size, what we are going to do is basically compute the trend of this function. To do that, we basically use the trend method that it's basically defined in one of the libraries that we imported before. And we defined a rolling window of 10 seconds of width. Obviously, there are more perfect means to the trend. The signal, we could use dual frequency data to get rid of the ionosphere, but in order to make things simpler, we are going to use the simple rolling window for that. And now we just computed the trended signal, and I want to show you that we have two additional columns besides the code minus carrier. We have the trend, right, that we have computed with a rolling window, and also the trended CMC, which is basically a subtraction of the CMC minus the trend of the CMC. Again, what we can do is just plot the results. Right here, what you are seeing is the high noise, high frequency noise, mid frequency noise, and trend in gray, and in dark we have this trend that we computed with a rolling window. Then we can go ahead and plot the detrended one, and as you can see, we have only the high noise contribution of the high frequency contribution of the noise, that what we are interested in. We can also perform additional analysis like computing the histogram of that plot, and as we can see, we have for the code, right, remember that we are subtracting code minus carrier, which means that most of the contributions in the noise is due to the code, because the carrier phase noise is much lower. So here at that point we can assume that everything in the noise is mostly due to the code. Anyway, in this case we can see that the histogram and then the 1 sigma for that Gaussian is roughly 1.5, 15 centimeters more or less, which is pretty decent figures of noise. We could also do this for all the signals that are available and then perform additional statistics like noise per constellation, noise per satellite, etc. Okay, so far we have checked the code noise, but then obviously we are also interested in having the phase noise. And here we are going to do exactly the same analysis that we did for the code minus carrier, but with a subtle difference. In that case, instead of the code minus carrier, remember that we need to remove the geometry. But the advantage of the affordable receivers that we are using for the AMIC project is that they are dual frequency. Since we have dual frequency, it means that we also have we can have the possibility of doing the dual frequency combination in order to get the ionosphere, and that's what we are going to use here. In that case, if we do the L1 minus L2, we are end up having the ionospheric delay, right? That is different for each frequency, because remember that the ionospheric media is a dispersive medium. Then obviously the problem is that we will have some constant terms that are due to the phase ambiguities, the phase hardware biases, and also we'll have the noise of the phase observables. The 2 and the 3 are problems, but it's something that we can quickly remove using a trending process in pretty much the same way that we did with the CMC. In that case, in order to compute the L1 minus L2, we need to use the pandas merge function, because as opposed to the CMC where we had the phase and noise in the same row, here we have to put the 2 observables that we want to subtract in the same row. And to do that, we are going to use the merge function. This is encapsulated in this method, the compute geometry free, that we are going to use now. So first, let's go and then define the satellite for which we want to make the process, and then define the 2 tracking channels that we are going to use. It's the 1C and 2L. Remember that the medium part of the 2C code is the one that starts tracking in the U blocks, and then it swaps to the long codes in the 2C. frequency or signal. So that's why we are using the 2L here instead of the 2S. And now let's compute the frequency, the geometry-free combination, and let's make it a head. And then let's see that we have the first row for the 1C, the second row or second group of rows for the L2 combination, and then at the end we have the phase combination of ionospheric combination and the phase ionospheric combination here at the end. So now what we have to do is plot them. That's pretty much we did for the CMC, and in that case you can see that we have the much more smooth. Obviously we have some problems due to low elevations where the multipath are more higher and more important. And now what we have to do is basically do the trend of this combination. Remember that we have a method to do that. It's called the trend LI combination. Here is the help function that you can call in order to get some information on how to use it. And now we are going to use that method, which basically subtracts the L1 and L2 for the two frequencies and computes the trend and removes the trend. Right here we'll see that we have the trend for the Li and then the trended version of the Li, the ionospheric combination of phases. Okay. So now what we can do is actually make some plots. We'll start with the trended Li combination, right? Pretty much as we obtained before. We have some low noise here, but okay, we can approximate that to receiver noise anyways. And we have a larger noise here in one of the ends or the tails of the signal of the series, which presumably is due to the low elevation that drives the multipath. Similarly to what did before, we just can plot the histogram of the phase noise, and as expected, we can see here that the error in the noise in the code in the phase, sorry, is much lower. We are talking here about less than 1 centimeter and 1 sigma, which is as expected, right? So we expect the phase noise to be on the order of millimeters. So with this tutorial, basically we have seen that with an appropriately good antenna, because the antenna is critical here, with a decent antenna, this is obtained with an affordable antenna as well. It's not a geodetic, it's not a choke ring. So, but with this type of antennas, we can get similar noise values than geodetic grade receivers, which makes us think that these sort of receivers can be a good option in order to make some scientific applications such as ionospheric monitoring as it's being done in the AMIC project. Okay, so that this concludes this second part of the workshop. In the following part, we are going to use some methods to actually use the GNSS data to get some ionospheric information relevant, in particular with the scintillation. So thanks for watching, and let's see again in the third part of the workshop. Bye bye.